This map is shaping up real nice. Hello everybody. Now that my latest build project, the cathedral behind me, is finally finished, I'd like to start working on some redstone builds in my world again. And the project that I have in mind is to work on my storage system. Now you may be thinking, you've already constructed everything here it seems, what could there possibly be to do? Well, to explain that, I'd like to explain how this system works to those of you who haven't seen it before. And it's pretty awesome. It's a multi-item sorter, and so what that means is we've got all of these different blocks indicating the different categories here, and inside the rows you can look inside and find lots of different items that all count towards those themes. And this is really good because it makes it really easy to find all the bits that you need, and it also makes it a lot more compact. As you'll notice, this entire system, which sorts every single item in the game, is fairly small considering. And if I just quickly throw the system on by flicking this lever and sending all of these items into the system, you'll begin to see the items coming through before they then run through the system, flickering through, as you can see, to find the category they need to sort out into. And inside of these chests, you can see those very categories. This is all of the items that will get sorted into these categories that are already set up here. Beneath, there's even a bulk section which will sort out all of those items that you need, such as stone and dirt that you get a lot of, into shulker boxes here, and even sort out a few for you to grab if you need, with even the ability to call the one that's currently being filled up so you have access to every item. And on the very end here, once it's all said and done, it'll even sort out the overflow, the unsortables, your non-stackables, potions and shulker boxes. And so this really is the full package. But there's one flaw which I did anticipate from the very start when I made this. You'll notice we've got all these lovely categories here, but as you can see, we've used up every single last one of them right to the end. And with the latest update introducing a lot of new copper blocks, so many in fact that I won't even be able to sort them all out into one category, I'm going to need to expand my storage. Not to mention those unstackables that I spoke about earlier are now building up so much that I have almost no room left in here, so I'll also need to expand this as well. And so that is the goal for today's video. I want to expand my system, get it ready for the future update which I would like to add to my world, and just generally improve this system as it's one of my favourite features in my world right now. And I think I actually want to start off with the unstackables, as I think this will be as simple as adding extra rows or columns to this storage system, whereas this is going to be a little bit more interesting to put together. My first thoughts is to use this side of the system right here, as it's no longer used anymore. You'll notice that this is your simple smelting system where you can place your items, fuel, and then get the product out here. But this was a little bit outdated, so I recently improved it and I made this super smelter, which will smelt up an entire shulker box of items in no time at all. And you can see it's just back there, and it's the reason I added this entire section. So needless to say, we don't need this anymore. But I still kind of use it occasionally. Sometimes you don't want to waste fuel, you just have one or two items you want to smelt. So it was pretty useful for that. And so I think I'll get around the problem of removing it by simply replacing my crafting table here with a single furnace, so that if I have a little something to smelt, I can put them in there, and then I no longer have a need for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gut it out and then replace it with a mirrored section that looks just like this. And I'm going to use that to expand my non-stackable items, as well as potentially replace this column that we have with something like potions, maybe enchanted books, to further sort them out. Plus we'll have a huge amount of storage, so that's going to take care of that nicely. So jumping straight into the first time lapse today, you can see that I did begin by removing all of those bits to make space for the new builds that we're going to make. And I did begin by removing those furnaces, which also had a bunch of aesthetic blocks around the back to keep it looking nice. So it did open up quite a large bit of space, which we'll be using as much of as possible in a moment. But there was also a section on the very top, the input to where the original non-stackable item storage was, which I needed to rework to add some of the new features that I want in this video. So I ended up ripping that out so that I could replace it with the updated version in the future. So shortly, as you'll see, I begin building up this new storage for the new non-stackables. And the advantage to actually expanding this and putting it over here is it enabled me to create a new feature which many other elements of the system have, which is an overflow storage, so that if this thing overflows, it will go into a section which will then alert me that it's overflowing, which also meant that I could then jump straight into building the other bit on the other side, which is a little bit more complicated because as opposed to just being a storage, this is actually the component that's going to sort all of the bits out. So I'm going to build this up quickly, and then I'd like to give you a really close look at this, as I'm really happy with how this mechanism turned out. Well then, here we are. It's never looked quite so symmetrical. As you can see on this side, I did opt to go for enchanted books as our one last category to sort out. So I've got all of mine in here right now. And that also means that I've gone ahead and transferred over all of the other items over to this side. And they're actually starting from the left here, which takes me a couple minutes to get used to just because I'm so used to having all my systems start from left to right. But this way round, it made sense with the wiring up top. Let's actually go and have a look at that because there's a few interesting things going on. First thing I'd like to point out is, since the time lapse, I did tweak this water system here. It originally went down and then around the back in that gap you see there, but I decided to lift it up top as it was just a little bit more efficient. I think I originally did that because I didn't want it on top of the glass, but there's really all of this up here, so it really doesn't make a difference once you're down there. So what we've got up here is this system, and we're going to take a closer look at this down there in just a moment. So I'll show you how this works in detail, but simply it moves the non-stackables over to this side where you have a pretty bog standard system to sort them out. And by the time they get to the very end here, if there isn't any space left in the system, it will shoot them out and combine it with the overflow which comes down here. And that will send it over to this overflow row of chests. And if this fills all the way up, it does turn on the indicator here, which tells me I certainly need to address it, but I think it's going to be a very long time until this fills up. So then let's head on down here where you can see I've created a little demonstration for you, which is a recreation of the mechanism we just saw up there. And this sorts out all of the items that I need in a very small, compact manner, and I'm really quite happy with it. So I'm looking forward to showing you how this works. First thing we have up here is of course the input, which would really be anything. In my case, the input is after the system has already sorted out non-stackables. And so you can put regular items in here and they would just come out with the rest of the sort of random non-stackables, but it's really not designed to sort them out. If you want to do that, you can simply add another component on here somewhere, such as a simple item filter. But the first thing it encounters is this little mechanism, which is actually shared from JRoy's original storage system, and it mainly focuses on just sorting out the potions. And so once the items go down, it will get detected and try attempting to shoot it out of this dispenser into the brewing stand. If it is a potion, it will be able to do that and it will head on into the chest. If it cannot do that, it's basically just going to get stuck in here, which is currently locked. But once it is up in there, the comparator is going to go ahead and detect it. And once it does that, it's going to trigger a few things. The first thing is it's going to turn this off, which is going to allow the item to move down a notch, but it won't go all the way to the bottom because it's also going to temporarily power this so that it can do some more thinking. Because the next thing we've got here is a chiseled bookshelf. And that means that if the item in here is a book, similar to how if it's a potion, it will simply go into this chest. And so we've already sorted out potions and books. And finally, once this little clock turns off, since the item is no longer in here, the comparator will unpower, unlock this hopper, and finally anything left over is going to end up at the very bottom. And so for a quick demonstration here, you can see that if I add in any regular items like these here, for example, they will make their way to the bottom, and then any books that we add into the system will finally come into the bottom left. And we've also got the potions, which will get sorted out right away into this top chest. So this really is a handy little contraption that you can use yourself to incorporate into your storage system, as it's always nice to be able to sort out some of those non-stackables without the use of a lathe. And that was actually the reason I did this here. I was originally contemplating adding a lot more organization to the added chests that we placed down there, with some more categories such as maybe tools and armor with the use of allays, but because of the amount of note blocks that I have in this area, I wasn't able to add an allay sorting section onto it nearby. It would have to be quite far away because of the sounds it produces, and so I needed an alternative where I was able to just sort out some of the key ones, and this is what I came up with in the end. So with all that said and done, I'm very happy that the non-stackables have been sorted out, literally, but we still have one more issue, which is that every single item left in the game still needs to be sorted out a little bit more thoroughly. We need to expand this, and fortunately that isn't too difficult to do. This system is A/B tileable, which means that every 2 sets of chests here can be repeated, so we can add an extra 2, 4, 6, 8 and pretty much as many layers to this as we like. However, there are a couple more limitations, and that's because underneath this system there's a little bit more going on than just the chests, and there's all kinds of wiring down here for various hopper locking mechanisms and portal loading and things like this. I don't want to modify it too much. I want to kind of retain the original design, just pushing it to its limits in terms of scale, and I've worked out by extending this section down here, I can pretty much extend this an extra 6 blocks or an extra 6 rows of chests, which is 12 more categories worth, which is a huge amount, with almost zero fuss, remaining the original design and everything like this. So that is my plan, and it involves quite a bit of work because I need to completely take off the back of this and then build up all of the sections. But I've got all my items here at the storage system, so all I need to do is crack on. In fact, as I'm putting this section together, as well as the previous one that we just constructed a moment ago, I find myself in a very unique position where, unlike with a lot of my previous builds, there's no need to gather resources or bring over a stash of blocks for the project. I'm actually right here in my storage system, or at least next to it, where I have every single one of my items, which made things a lot easier because I could jump in and out grabbing the items I need instead of filling up my whole inventory, which was especially useful because this project does have a very big block palette for a redstone build. And so I did get to work until my next task, which will be putting together and sorting out all of the new filters and categories after this massive switch up. With all of the new space that's been created, you can see that I've already started putting it to use. I've gone ahead and moved the glowstone, which was previously over here, onto this side so that it matches with the rest of all of the blocks. And then I've also gone and moved the bamboo down to this end, which was previously over here, because I've split the original warped and crimson block category into 2 here to split it off, since I've now changed a lot of these textures, as you can see, as part of my custom resource pack. So since I am actually using these blocks now, I don't need to cram them all into one, as there is quite a few of them. I've also done a similar thing with some of the categories on this side. I originally had wool and carpets together, but I've now gone ahead and split them off as I'm using them more than ever, and since I have my wool farm, it really is filling up quite fast at this rate. And then over on this side, I've divided up 2 more categories, the plants and the random items. So for the random items, I did what I was effectively already manually doing, and I moved all of the sort of blocks, so to speak, that you can actually place that I use in builds into one chest, and then I left all of those other random, just regular items in another. And then I've also made a 3rd edition, which is I've moved all of the arrows into its own separate category. Originally, I decided that I didn't want to sort out all of the different tipped arrows, as it was kind of pointless since I didn't really have the space, but now that I do, I think it'd be really awesome to sort out every single one with all the different timings just for the sake of saying that I've done them all. And then over here in the plants category, you can see that I've sorted out all of the different flowers into its own category and all of the different seeds. As you can see, I've got quite a few of them now, and it was getting a little bit difficult to sort of cram them all into here. I was doing a similar thing that I had with the random items where I was manually sorting it out, so this just makes a lot more sense. Now what I have done, as you can see, is I've already moved the items into these chests, and I have sorted out the filters for all of the bulk storages here, as it's pretty simple. What I haven't done is sort out the filters up top. As you can see up here, it's still a blend of carpets and wool, and then over towards the new section, it's just completely blank, which means we certainly cannot use the system in this state. So first things first, let's get all of these sorted out so that we can call the filters and generally just this aspect of the system complete. This was all relatively easy since I already had the items in the previous chests. I just needed to rearrange them. However, it left a couple gaps, so I needed to craft up a few more placeholder items. I like to just use name sticks since I have quite a few of those. However, this did leave me with one challenge to overcome, which I'd kind of put off towards the end, which was crafting up all of those different arrows. It's actually a little easier said than done, since each of these arrows need their own individual potion with all of the different effects that there are in the game for each of the potions with the dragon's breath. And so the first thing I did was I headed over to the end just to get myself a bunch more dragon's breath, since I didn't have much of it and I'd be needing quite a bit. And then it came to just painstakingly going through and creating all of these different potions, which usually involves something like creating the awkward potion first and then adding the main ingredient to make the potion, before then adding in an amplifier or a speed duration boost, before then adding in the gunpowder to make it a splash potion, and that dragon's breath to make the lingering potion, where you would then craft up the arrows. So it's quite a process, but I managed to get it all done in the end. Alright, well, I've now done some fairly thorough testing. I've inputted a bunch of different items, a couple of newer ones from the new sections and a couple of older ones. We've got regular items, some non-stackables, and it works. I'm really happy that this thing has gone off without a hitch. There's usually some kind of teething problems or something, but I'm happy to say that this thing is now finished. So I'm super happy with this, but I'm not finished just yet for today, because there's a few more things I want to tackle. You may have noticed that over the last few months I've not had the opportunity to upload a video because I've just been so busy with life. However, in the spare bits of time that I've had here and there, I have been able to tackle my custom resource pack, updating it and adding all sorts of awesome new features, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you follow my Discord, as I've been posting all of my updates on there. And what I want to do is actually revisit a couple of old build projects to introduce and just share with you some of those new textures. And so what we're going to do straight away is jump on over from here where we are right now on the Mushroom Island over to my world map temple. Alright, well, here we are. We're back at the world map temple, one of my favourite projects in this world. As I just climb down this ladder here, you'll get to see some of my new brick texture that's dotted around this ceiling. It looks a bit funky at the moment just because of the way it's been incorporated, but I'm looking to do a lot more of that in the future. However, the first thing I'm looking to tackle is actually down here in the rockwork. Since building this terraforming that we did on this island, I have since added gravel slabs and stairs using the warped blocks that I have, which you would be familiar with since I used it in my last terraforming project over by the city. And I decided to actually revisit this project and replace a lot of the andesite stairs and slabs that I'm using here, since this whole thing is a gradient and they actually kind of interrupt it in certain locations where it would make more sense to have the gravel ones. After this, I prepared some anvils by dropping them from a certain height so that they would get slightly damaged, as a new addition to my pack is that the different block states of the 3 different damaged anvils actually now have different textures so that I can use that beautiful shape in my builds. So we've still got the default anvil for the undamaged one, and then the slightly damaged one is polished andesite so that I can use it in my city, and finally the last one is smooth sandstone, or just a regular sandstone, which is applicable to a lot of different things, and I can imagine using it in a lot of future builds. Today though, I'm using the polished andesite ones along my bridge to improve the details on the handrailing. Finally, there's one last change that I want to share with you today, and that's over here in the cathedral where I have my custom bed textures. Now you may have noticed over the course of the last few videos, as I've sort of briefly brought up, they've gone through a couple different iterations, and I've kind of been working on it to try and find something that I think works for me, because my main goal here is to get some fresh new colours whilst also keeping it default feeling. So what I've changed for this latest update here is I removed the sort of wooden border that we had on the front. I felt that this just took away from the vanilla feel, and I think it's much better to keep that kind of OG bed design. And then I've also gone ahead and changed it back to the default wooden colour instead of all the sort of oak wooden colour, instead of the stripped dark oak that I had before. Although it was using vanilla colours, it just didn't feel vanilla enough, it felt odd, and so I've gone back to this and I'm actually pretty happy with how this looks. The custom colours here, there are quite a few of. If you want to see all of them, go ahead and check out that post like I mentioned on my Discord, as they're all on there. But over here I've got these 2, and this one actually isn't meant to be straw, that's just something I've changed, but that is one of the colours right there. And up here in the sleeping quarters you can kind of see another example of how these beds look when they're side by side. Alright, well that'll just about wrap up today's video. I'm really going to enjoy using these new textures into future build projects that I have many plans for. But right now I'm also working on some new textures and stuff for the 1.21 update, which is what, with the new updated storage system, I'm now looking forward to exploring in the next video.